lot, Manthan, for having me, and special thanks to Vikram, who's really pressed upon me the importance of coming here and addressing this meeting. And so yeah, it's not often that you meet very persuasive and kind people in public life. So thank you, sir, for everything that you did to make this possible today. I loved what Gauhar said. My Hindi is very broken, like every Tamil person's. But I tried to understand what I could, and what he said about, protest poetry, resistance poetry, and revolutionary poetry. And I thought Professor Gauhar has taken, or poet Gauhar has taken away all my words and all my thoughts. So what am I going to say in front of the stage? It was like he's taking everything I have to say. But one of the beautiful things that I want to start with is, actually he said all of art is protest. And I want to go back to the Tamil word for art. The Tamil word for art is kalai. So kalai means art, but kalai also means disrupt. Kalai means take something and, something is in order, you put it into disorder. Kalai is that subversion, that disruption. And because we are living in a fascist time, and what is fascism but order? What is fascism but the extreme imposition of order in our lives, that sometimes, it becomes the job of art. The job of, what we call kalai in Tamil is to disrupt, to stand up against fascism. I know that you've had 2 previous sessions of poetry. So of course I'm going to talk to you, but I thought that, my poetry talks better than me in terms of speeches. So I'm going to start with a poem. Tomorrow someone will arrest you. I wrote this for my 2 close friends, Jason Cooper and Tushar Sarathi, who were arrested under the UAPA. Tomorrow someone will arrest you and will say that the evidence is there was some problematic book in your house. Tomorrow someone will arrest you. And your friends will see on TV the media calling you terrorist because the police do. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. They will scare all lawyers. The one who takes up your case will be arrested next week. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. Your friends will see you active on Facebook a day later. The police logged in as you. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. Your friends will find that it takes 4 days to find 1,000 people to sign a petition. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. Your little child will learn what UAPA stands for. Your friends will learn of Section 13. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. You will be a leftist to the people. You will be ultra-left to the leftists. No one will speak. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. The day after that, you will be considered a terrorist for life. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. The police will prepare a list of names. Anyone who would protest will be named. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. You will be warned. You will be a warning to everyone fighting corporate loot and police state. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. Your home will be searched tonight. You will be taken for questioning now. Stop speaking. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. The court, in a rare gesture, will give you the benefit of bail. The police will re-arrest you in another case. This will go on and on. Tomorrow, someone will arrest your children. You will be underground. The police will tell your old mother to consume poison and feed it to the kids. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you, your partner, your children, your children's children. Some measures are essential to keep a democracy alive. Long live silence. The reason I wanted to come and, I had a choice of topic. I could talk about literally anything I wanted, and I said, I want to speak about the freedom of expression. And the reason is because, this is happening in Hyderabad, and there's something none of us here can forget, which is an 82-year-old poet, Varavara Rao, is in custody. He's been in custody for the last 4 years. He's accused under one of the most draconian laws that exist in any country in the world, which is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, where bail is not possible. It's only now, recently, like 2 months ago, that he managed to get medical bail. But what is happening in our country is is a crackdown on, all kinds of writers, intellectuals, and dissident voices. And the form that it takes, it's no longer, somebody just filing. They do this as well, Sometimes somebody draws a cartoon saying, showing a chief minister with a milk bottle in his mouth and a shoe on his head, and then this person gets a lot of cases filed on them. Or somebody puts a hoarding, I think this happened in July, puts a hoarding of the prime minister with the hashtag bye bye Modi, and then these people also have cases filed against them. So these kind of smaller cases, that happen, we are almost accustomed to it. It should not be the norm. This is not how it should be when you speak truth to power, but we are almost accustomed to it. But what is happening is something far more dangerous, which is that the neoliberal idea, the idea that, followed 9/11, which followed the use of war on terror, this use of war on terror to crack down on anybody who is capable of organizing, the use of war on terror to anybody who is capable of dissent, the use of war on terror to anybody who can put people on the streets. I think this is happening in a very unprecedented way. And of course, writers happen to be one of the first people to take the hit. So I spoke about the example of Varavara Rao, who is there in the Bhima Koregaon case. But the Bhima Koregaon case also contains, it's the BK-16, and in this case, you find several other writers imprisoned, one of whom I think is, again, a very important case, or very famous case, which is the case of Dr. Anand Teltunde. So Dr. Anand Teltunde, as possibly everybody in this room knows, is one of the most fierce Ambedkarite, fierce Marxist, and leftist, and feminist voices that we have in this country. He, for the last 20 years, nothing less, has been warning us about what happens when fascism comes to India. He's been warning us about, what is it when, people lose their, what happens when fascists are actually elected to government. And one of those things that he says is that, we are going to see Dalit people having more atrocities against them. We're going to see the situation of women downgrade in society. We're going to see dissidents being jailed. And literally everything that, he talks about, and this is for the last 20 years, everything that he feared would happen, we see that it is coming to pass. And now, he's 72, 73 years old. He's imprisoned in Taluja. And he's not a singular case. This Gautam Navlaka is also older than 70 years. So what we see, I'm just being tagged by Manthan online. Let me talk. So what we are seeing now is the use of legal machinery, the use of all kinds of repression to silence voices. And we would make the mistake of thinking that perhaps this is the problem of one regime. We would think this is the problem of, let's say, one political party, and it's going to end there, that that's where you draw the line. But unfortunately, that is not how these systems work, because part of how you understand fascism is that it is the capture of every singular institution. It is the capture of the judiciary, it's the capture of the police, it's the capture of the CBI, the ED, and every other institution that can exist. Therefore, all of them function as if they are part of the regime. There is no independence. And when this kind of situation happens, you see the after effect of it. The after effect of it is not that there are 8 or 9 writers in jail in this infamous Bhima Koregaon case, but you see that it silences everybody else. So for instance, Varavara Rao's poetry was supposed to be published by Penguin. And in fact, this is a very interesting case story that I think I personally want to share, because Penguin wrote to us and said, we are interested in publishing Varavara Rao's poetry. At no point did I or Varavara Rao say, oh, we want a corporate publisher. We didn't think of Penguin. I don't think I would have thought of Penguin in 1,000 years for his poems. They wrote to us and they said they wanted his poems. And then they said, oh, you're using words like Hindutva, using words like saffron, using words like, dictator. And this word, that dictator he was using, was actually for Indira Gandhi. It was a poem written during the emergency. How is it going to affect the status quo sentiments today, But then that's the thing, poems are eternal. So what happens is that once repression sets in, once this clamp down on the freedom of expression sets in, then it just spreads like a virus. It's far more contagious than corona, and no mask is going to save us, because the left liberals are infected. The mainstream corporate capitalist publishing is infected, newspapers are infected, media houses are infected, everyone doesn't want to step across the line. And we're living then in this climate of, extreme censorship. And it's followed also by what is even more tragic, which is self-censorship. And I want to say this example because, when you see somebody who's 80 being dragged in prison, when you see someone even older than Varavara Rao, which is Father Stan Swami, a priest from Tamil Nadu, who is imprisoned again in the Bhima Koregaon case. He had Parkinson's. He was denied a sipper, his normal straw, inside prison, and he died, being refused to take to hospital, being refused medical bail several times. So when you see something happen to somebody prominent, I think it sends these waves of terror. That's also how state terror operates. Like, people become silenced. People think if it can happen to somebody as famous as them, if it can happen to somebody as fearless as them, if this kind of oppression and arrest can happen to somebody as well known or, with such mass backing, then what about us? And what happens at that moment is that this envelopes you into silence. It kind of smothers you into silence. So there's not as many voices speaking about these things as they should be. And that's very concerning. That's very concerning because without anything happening, we are going into these little silences. And this is where I also wanted to talk about many other things, but one of the things that comes to mind is, the idea of sabka number aayega. That this is like musical chairs, that one day, tomorrow, someone will arrest you, is going to visit each of us. I'm not somebody who doesn't know about it, or I'm not unaware of it. But the thing is, until the day they're putting you away, until the day they're taking you to prison, until the day when, something is going to happen that's going to silence you, officially, procedurally, and this, when I talk about silencing, I also think that in this country, silencing is not just about putting someone in prison. That's what they do when they like you. When they like you, they put you in prison. If they really don't like you, then they're fringe elements, Sanatan Sanstha or whatever fringe elements they have, then they just take you out. That's what happened to Narendra Dabolkar. That's what happened to Kalburgi. That's what happened to Gauri Lankesh. So when the regime really doesn't like you, you vanish. So if they really like you a little bit, they find you tolerable, they put you in jail. And they wait for you to die. They wait, because they know eventually 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, how long can they hold on? And so that's what I wanted to say is, if it's a question of sabka number aayega, then it has an obvious corollary, which is that until your number comes, you have the time to speak, that you have the time to articulate what you stand for, you have the time to stand up against this, you have the time to say what you want to, the time to say what you believe in, and I think that's a very important right. That's not something that we should give away. Then there's something else that I wanted to kind of highlight, which is related to defending the freedom of expression, which is also that, things are not as clear-cut as they were. It's true that we're talking about fascism, we're talking about the Third Reich, we're talking about Nazi Germany or Mussolini's Italy, and then we realize, okay, they were making use of spectacle, which is what is happening today. Everywhere there is a spectacle, and people are being distracted. People are not asking the questions they should be asking, and there's so much diversion. But we also have to understand that whatever is happening, this culture of repression, this culture of silencing, this culture of communalism, this culture that promotes caste hierarchy, caste supremacy, which promotes patriarchy, that all of this is also happening through, the support of the largest capitalist corporations of today. So there is no imagining that, the fascists are in power without having the richest men in this country support them. You just cannot divorce the two, that, it is capitalism which keeps this engine going, and it is fascism which makes sure that, capitalism is fed, or at least these two crony capitalists are fed. And I think we cannot de-link these two, and sometimes I think this combination of, capitalist fascism or fascist capitalism is something that should be deeply worrying, because even if you are, above religion, above caste, above, gender, and I'm sure a lot of people are very, don't necessarily go by identity politics, don't necessarily see all of this, but we should still worry about our country in terms of what is happening. Like, you may be Brahmin, you may not worry about caste, you may be, Dalit, you may not worry about caste, but there's a larger question that's happening to the country. The question is, how does somebody get to own all the airports? How does somebody get to own all the ports? How does somebody be in the energy sector, in the railway sector, in the, the food sector, because of whom farm laws are coming in, because of whom, new trade laws are coming, new labor codes are coming in. So there is no way in which, you can de-link. It's, in some ways, people construct what's happening as a Hindu-Muslim problem. And in some circles, they're constructing what is happening as a Brahmin supremacist, patriarchal versus Dalit, Dravidian, or, much more egalitarian social problem. In some people, what we see, in some ways, what we see is a very toxic masculine thing going on towards, a backlash on women, especially a backlash against Muslim women. Therefore, the control of the hijab, telling that, young Muslim women cannot take exams, cannot go to college, but also something that's happening on the bodies of Hindu women. You're asked to reproduce, you're asked to be the good wife, you're asked to, do this and this. And it's also like, it's not just Meena Kandasamy standing here and, saying some bullshit about what comes to her. It's also the numbers. Like, once this has happened, what is the percentage of women in the workforce? And why do we see the coincidence between the rise of fascism and the drop in the numbers of women in the workforce? Like, these are all data points that, we just cannot wish away, because part of what Hitler said about, the way he understood, his own philosophy is that the family is the smallest unit of the state. So when they want to start controlling, it is this little structure of family where they start their control, where they start their, where the, the ideas of the shaka go into, where the first impregnation of ideas of hate, everything happens. And I'm sure all of you also know, at least through WhatsApp groups, what kind of, hatred is going on and, doing the rounds. So the reason I, speak about all of this is that we should also see the larger picture of what's actually happening to this country. Why are all the public sector units being sold? And how is it, what is happening economically to this country? So we don't really look at this as, just one or two sets of problems, but try to understand broader now horizons and see where exactly, like, and what do we do? What do we do to resist? What do we do to stand up against this? And in this context, there was something I really wanted to say, which is where I started, because once we realize the role of this, we also have to realize the role of language, because, any kind of ideology cannot exist without the control over language, which is also why I think the work of writers becomes far more important. And to talk about the use of language, I'm going to take us a little bit far away. We are really used to how language is played in Hindu-Muslim relationships, or how language is played in causing communal disharmony. But going to this little village in Bastar that I happened to visit earlier this year, where for the last 1 year there has been an occupation by the people. The people in this little village of Silgair in Chhattisgarh have been on an Occupy movement, occupying the main, the main roads to prevent the Indian army or the paramilitary forces from actually building a camp. So in one way, the state wants to occupy and build military camps. They have built, tens of camps in the last 3 years. But in another way, the people are occupying their own land and saying, no, we are not going to allow you to build another camp. And it's very interesting what you see in Silgair, because all of this that's taking place in the terminology of the state. But in fact, the state is at the mercy of corporates. Corporates want the land because they want to do mining. It's for the purpose of resource extraction that they want these large roads. It's for the purpose of troop movement that they want roads. So, the state, whenever, you hear the propaganda, it's always the state and capitalist propaganda, it's always like, we want development. And it says the people are against development. But then in Silgair, there's no electricity. In Silgair, there are no cement homes. In Silgair, there's no running water. In Silgair, there are no toilets. You have to go to the bushes. In Silgare, there are no schools. In Silgare, the hospital is 18 kilometers away. But it is in the Silgare that they want a camp. So then you realize that the development that they speak about is not the development of the normal person, it's the development of the military infrastructure, it's the development of, corporate loot. And I think this is something that we see every day, the way I can give hundreds of examples, but I'm going to open up for questions in 5 minutes. So I think what is happening here is that the same thing also happens, you go to the Mumbai airport or a couple of airports, now that Adani owns a lot of airports, you see this little patch of green and they're like, they have forested some part of an airport. So within the airport you have some trees and you have some waterfalls. It's a nice place. But on the other hand, what they are doing to Hasdeo, the forest of Hasdeo, there's more than 140,000 trees that are going to be cut in order to allow for mining to take place. So, what is all of this CSR or corporate social responsibility, all of this propaganda that takes care of, language and presents this mirage to us, and on the other hand, something else is happening. And I think this is a moment of reflection in which I don't think that, writing is somebody's calling, or writing is, you have to be divine and blessed by some talent. I really don't believe in all of this. I really think it's everybody's job, everybody's, time, everybody's inclination to shatter what is happening, to tell the truth, to call out all of this, all of this hypocrisy, all of this neoliberal subversion of language. Because if we don't do that, we become victims of propaganda. We become victims of WhatsApp universities. We become victims of, complete and thorough brainwashing in which only one narrative exists. And it's so much important to, shatter these narratives and to give the common a larger narrative. And I also think that one of the other things that should be done is that we should be ready to evolve. So I remember that, when I was 17 or 18, I wrote this poem against Gandhi, a very critical poem. But then I would, in the last 20 years, you realize that, you evolve yourself politically to understand that, Gandhi was not right on the question of the Dalits. He was not right on the question of women. He had many problems, but still he's a national figurehead we need today. We need today in the context of what is happening. So I come from Tamil Nadu, as you know, and today, for instance, the October 2 was a very important day because a couple of weeks ago, I think the RSS had requested permission to hold rallies or route marches in 50 different towns and cities of Tamil Nadu. And they went to the court. The police said that it's not possible. They went to the court and they got the permission in the beginning. And it's very interesting, like, people are asking, like, what's RSS got to do with Gandhi? You guys assassinated him or something, So what's your connection? But they were like, oh, we are observing Ambedkar's anniversary? What's October 2 got to do with it? And they were like, giving all, and they said, we are observing Vijayadasami, like when does Vijayadasami even fall? Not on the October 2. So they were giving all of these reasons, but largely it was to appropriate one more day in the calendar. Just like, December 6, which is for Dalit people, involved with Ambedkar's memory, was appropriated with Babri Masjid and its demolitions. They wanted to appropriate another day in the calendar. And the more I saw this protest and the way I saw, the way they wanted to put people on the streets, I realized, how is this going to play out? And there was a political lesson there, because what happened immediately was that the Liberation Panthers, or the Dalit Panthers in Tamil Nadu, said, we are also going to hold a communal harmony human chain on the same day as the RSS. And I felt like this is a very good counter, because it's coming from the Dalit people. It's coming from as a resistance to the Sanatan Dharma of the fascist missionary, but it's also coming against the obvious, not only caste, but also the obvious communalization of the public sphere that they want to create, and the chaos they want to create. But what was beautiful was what unraveled over the last 3-4 days. Every single Ambedkarite organization said they would join the human chain. The leftist organizations, everybody expressed their support and they said they would join the human chain. And, literally every single Periyarist organization came and said, we will join the human chain. And there was so much progressive support. And then you see that, sometimes you feel, okay, Tamil Nadu might be the exception, that it doesn't matter how much the fascists try, that it is going to be a certain part where they're not going to be able to, it is a fortress which they cannot, shatter, which they cannot penetrate, which they cannot break down. And I really keep that belief in mind because of what I see. Because if fascists are taken to the streets, you don't answer them by only, keeping yourself aloof. You don't answer them by only writing books. You only don't answer them through the op-ed columns of newspapers. If they take to the streets, you meet them on the streets. And for what is required is, ideological clarity, but also the willingness to take risks. Knowing the willingness that, if you're on the street, you could go to jail, you could, risk your life, you could do so much, but just the willingness to put yourself out there. And I sort of wanted to finish on that note by then reading a poem, and then possibly I have another 14 minutes, and then I'll take some questions for the last 10 minutes. Quite a long poem. Give me a second. I'll just finish with the poem. Thank you. Sorry, give me a second. I'm just quite bad at technology myself. We are not the citizens. This is again very interesting because, when I wrote this poem, I want to just give a few lines of introduction. I took an example from, these are lines from the classic Tamil poetry of the Bhakti poet Thirunavukarasar, who was persecuted by Mahendravarman, the Jain Pallava emperor, for his faith in Shaivism. So if Hindus like to believe that, they can lord everybody around, there was a time when you just couldn't, follow Shaivism, which is one of the quote-unquote branches of Hinduism. So it's widely believed that these lines were sung when efforts were made to arrest him and produce him in Mahendravarman's court. So this is from a 7th century Tamil poem. And I thought it's quite nice that, sometimes people have to be reminded of their own histories. We are not the citizens. Namarkum kudiyallom namanai anjom, naragathil idarpadom nadalai illom. We are not the subjects of anyone. We do not fear the God of death. We shall not suffer. Were we to end in hell? We have no deception. We have no illusions. Namarkum kudiyallom namanai anjom, naragathil idarpadom nadalai illom. Nobody's citizens and nobody's slaves, fearless of lynchings and beheadings, unscarced by the torrent of hellfires. We do not tremble at certain death. Namarkum kudiyallom namanai anjom, naragathil idarpadom nadalai illom. As people, we refuse to be ruled. As people, we refuse to die. As people, we refuse to suffer. As people, we refuse to be deceived. Namarkum kudiyallom namanai anjom, naragathil idarpadom nadalai illom. Thank you so much.
Meena, you've been part of the Bharat Jodo Yatra. If I remember right, were you on the streets? Did you join the Yatra?
I will explain.
Remember.
You ask a question,
yeah. So I just wanted to get what is the sense you got from the Bharat Jodo Yatra? Because I read something that you had written about.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. A lot of my friends started texting me, Meena for Congress, MP, MLA. No, I didn't join the Congress. I have to give the disclaimer. I went there because I really believe that, whenever I write about something, I go there, whether it's an atrocity or whether it's a meeting. So I cannot write about something. I don't believe so much in op-eds and think pieces. So this was happening in Tamil Nadu, so I just flew in there. I spent the first day of the yatra there, and the second day a little bit of the morning as well. Part of it was to see what was happening on the ground, and to see what was the ideology behind it, and to check out for myself, was it just about Rahul and image building, or was it really about fighting fascism and uniting the state in the country? And I found more of the latter. I really found that, because there were slogans in Tamil and, people were raising all of this, I really felt that there was this energy and this anger and young people having, trying to change the system and to be part of the system. So I felt it was good. So, thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Can I see hands going up? Yes. this young boy here.
Girl.
Oh, sorry, no, it's a girl. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Blame it on my eyesight.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Sumaida. Hello. Yeah. I am 26 currently. I'm a Dalit and feminist, as I think to be. And I want to, even the core Ambedkarites too, follow the same patriarchy which is going on since generations and generations. So how to break this cycle of patriarchy and how to lead the youth in the direction of new social movements, such as feminist movements, in the near future? Is it through only political route or through cultural route?
I would not, thanks Sunita for this question. I think that we encounter patriarchy on an everyday rolling basis, so it's not a new thing. I wouldn't divorce the political and the cultural. I think they're very interlinked. But in terms of how to break this, so it's a very, very difficult question. Recently, for instance, I was invited to an event and I couldn't go because they had invited Vairamuthu, who happens to be a molester. This was an event that took place on a Dalit party's political platform, but I said, no, it doesn't sit well with me, And then they said she's a Brahmin agent because he only molested a Brahmin girl. Like, a molester is a molester, It doesn't matter which girl he preys upon. So for me, I think it's a very important, like at some point you have this leverage in your life where you can say, I'm going to refuse to turn up and refuse to show up. But at some other point, you wouldn't have the same leverage. You would be a young person, you would need that opportunity, you would need that stage, and you would need to make use of it. So again, this is a question for an individual to answer. But the answer to this question, I think, is because we are not participating in enough numbers. It's because we are the minority that as women, that all of this happens to us. Like imagine if instead of being 5 or 5 or 4 or 2 or 1 on a stage, if we were the predominant majority, like would this kind of incident happen? Like a few weeks ago, there was a meeting in which there's a woman who left the ADMK and joined the BJP, and there's another male member who is trying to, try to touch her, try to grope her, and she's trying to just push him away. The video is viral everywhere. And she's a very senior person. She's like 50, 55. And she's also like, literally whom we would see as a mother and a respectable person. And then, like what is actually happening? Like when women, we put ourselves like physically in the public sphere, we don't become public property, It's a very important decision for us to make that clear and to have a sufficient amount of backlash that, protects us as well. So I think it's it's something that has to be addressed everywhere, and for women not to take, I think this is where I think solidarity has to be cross-party, cross-caste. You just cannot be quiet because it happens to a woman of another party. You can't be quiet because it happens to a woman of another caste. If it happens to a woman, you speak out. Whether you're a man or a woman, you speak out. I think it's very important. Zero tolerance, I think. We need that. Sorry, yeah.
There's one hand going up there. And by the way, Bashir said the last question should be given to a man. So I think all the rest of the questions can be asked by women. So let your hands go up. I don't know how to do that.
Can I go ahead? Yeah. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Hi, Meena. My question is with regard to the fascism. Why there is a difference between Bilkis Banu and the case of Nirbhaya? I think you have seen the convicts of Bilkis Banu have been released, and we are seeing the stage where they have been garlanded and appreciated and been accepted by the majority. So, to be honest, as a Muslim, it's getting very difficult and toxic for all of us. And I've seen my friends, my fraternity, giving up and, thinking to settle abroad, move out of India. But I, as an Indian Muslim, want to fight back and tell that no, this is the fascist state. I understand, but we need to fight back. But my primary question is how I should convince my friends. Just think of your decision of instead of going back and staying back and fighting back the fascism.
So thank you. There's two things here. Once I'll comment later on Bilkis Banu. On the question of moving back, I was living in London for 8 years or 9 years, and the Delhi riots happened and I visited. And when I visited, I thought, I spent about 30 years becoming a political person in India, and this is the time to move back. And especially as a Hindu woman, I felt that all the more. This was my duty, to see that this country doesn't become the hate machine that it was becoming. So, it was not an easy move to make, like first world luxury, teaching in 2 London universities. I left all that and came back. So I really think this is not a question for just Muslim people, it's a question for Hindu people as well, as for Hindu youngsters as well. Do you want to stay here and let somebody else take over your country or what you believe is your country? Or do you want to, be away and to come here and to try to show that, Hindu does not have to mean a majoritarian or communal and oppressor, that there are different ways of, approaching what it means and to redefine what it means to be Indian. So I really think it's a question that it should not be the minority that thinks about it as much as the majority. And it's also a very personal thing because a very close friend of mine was actually moving back. She's from Chennai and she's actually fleeing the country because those who are actually able to afford it among the Muslims are doing it. I know this from, again, a close set of friends. They are leaving, and it's tragic, and I think that you just feel shameful about it. So that's the one thing. The second thing on Bilkis Bano is that, of course, the way they were allowed before their term, the way the garlanding and the public support, it shouldn't be something that just doesn't affect, as I said, offend only Muslim people. But it should offend every single woman. Like, what kind of a culture? It's rape culture. If a rapist is garlanded, it is rape culture. We cannot call it anything else. If they are celebrated, it is nothing else. So I think if they're given sweets and what culture celebrates rape? Would you do this if it was, somebody violated your own bodily integrity? If it happened to your sister, mother, friend, colleague, like how could you sit and let this happen? The second question, which I think is slightly complex, is the question of remission. The question of remission is that what happened here, a lot of procedural mistakes happened, but I still believe that political prisoners have to walk out someday. They cannot be like, at some point, you cannot incarcerate a prisoner for life. So with Bilkis Bano, I think there's a huge miscarriage of justice. But in general, for instance, as a Tamil person, we wanted Peri Arivalan to come out. After 30 years, he came out because there is a limit to which any political prisoner can serve a sentence. I think this case is an exceptional case. I'm sure they should have served their whole lifetime. But I don't think that, under the constitution, under the present legal system, you can say somebody should be locked up for life. Because in that sense, Muslims happen to be far more number of prisoners, because they're criminalized by the Indian state, they happen to be far more people who happen to be Muslim and Dalit and Adivasi in prison. So we are fighting for prisoners' rights. So I think the question is, we cannot say all prisoners have to spend their time in jail. Bilkis Bano's rapist, of course, there was a huge, they were also called, what were they called? Sanskari Brahmins. So they were called, and I think the Brahmin community should have been so outraged that, somehow whatever they claim for themselves is linked to these rapists. They should have said, we have nothing to do with these guys. The Manu Dharma, there's a talk about excommunication. That's the first thing that they say. If a Brahmin does something, you excommunicate him. But which Brahmin was excommunicating these rapists, That's what should have happened, going back to their own logic and their own laws. So yeah, I understand and feel your anger and your pain. I'm equally outraged.
We can take just one.
Yeah, just last
question.
1 minute and I'll give a 1 minute answer and leave the stage.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, he raised his hand before. Yes.
Yes, sure.
Who? No, I can see that. You can't see him.
Yeah. Hello, Meena. You have talked about freedom of expression with respect to speaking to someone in power. My question is regarding freedom of expression when a set of people getting offended for someone expressing their thoughts among themselves or from someone outside their kind of community. So, like Salman Rushdie has stated that without freedom to offend, freedom of expression ceases to exist. So, does a writer or someone in writing literature, do they have some self-responsibility, or should they have some self-censorship to draw a line between this freedom of expression and freedom to offend?
Um, that's a beautiful trap question, I believe. But thank you for asking this. I will speak from where I come from, which is that I was born a Hindu. I was born in an anti-caste, intercaste family. And I offend my own religion a lot. And there is a reason I do that, because we live in a culture of silence. We live in, and the only way you can have a conversation is through provocation. There is no other way. There's no other way we can say, oh, women are treated badly, Shudras are treated badly, Dalits are treated badly, atrocities are happening. There is silence. And then you say one thing offensive, and then everybody wants to listen to what you said, because then you become this girl, you know, oh, she called Rama this, and she talked about Sita sitting on Ravan's lap, or then everybody is outraged. And then I'm like, okay, I got the space to speak. So what happens is that, you know, there is a reason, like, you know, of course, as a writer, you have the right to offend sentiments with your words, because the structure is offending you. The system is oppressing you. So the offense that you're causing is basically like, you know, a little rat or a little mouse just making some squeaky noises saying, you can't do this to me. Because your structure is there on top of me. Your structure is oppressing me, and this is the smallest leeway I get. So I think my time's up, but thank you for that question, and thanks to
Meena, this last question from here.
Yeah,
Otherwise, the gentleman will say I'm myopic.
you can't, you're not an ophthalmologist to diagnose, you know.
My question is, in India, there are lot many people who are married and who abandon their wife, and they are not even taking their mother. When this kind of people will be stopped? Second, when the Devadasi system will stop in this country?
Enough.
And when Indian women
Done. Two
will
questions done.
stop becoming the richest
And
girls
this third
in the
question.
world? When we will stop dowries system?
The 4 questions. Answer just 2.
So, I really wish we lived, you call me sisters, I'll call you brother. I wish we have the freedom to leave marriages. We cannot tell, I think it's everybody's right. You know, just because somebody holds high office, I cannot say he must live with his wife. Abandoning is wrong, but the freedom to leave a marriage exists for everybody. And whether it's a woman or whether it's a man. So I have left a violent marriage, you know. So I really believe that it's a very fundamental freedom that, you know, people should have the right to exercise. Having said that, I think that, yeah, dowry, of course, is bad and so on, but I'm going to stop right there. So Devadasi system was abolished by law a long time ago. Then I have to be like a politician and say the law should take its course.